The Andy Poland Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, figuring they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Poland Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
It may be the most significant saying in football. Next man up. And it fits because the injury rate, especially in the National Football League, 100%. Everybody has an injury over the course of the season. The question is whether that player can play through it or whether he has to sit out games. If he has to sit out games or sit out plays, the next man up has to step in and play. And with big doubts about Terry McLaurin going into the Atlanta game and at least some doubts about Jaden Daniels, we'll see how next man up performs against the defense, which has actually been pretty good. The offense, fortunately for Washington, of Atlanta has been putrid. They're second to last in scoring in the league at 14 points a game. And their quarterback is ranked 28th out of 31 qualified passers, 71.3 passer rating. That is not good. Michael Penix was benched last week in a shutout loss. You don't see shutouts very often in the NFL, and especially a shutout to a team that's just, meh. But that's what happened last week to the Falcons in Carolina. So we're going to find out more about the injuries today. Dan Quinn is supposed to talk to the media, and we'll give an update on both Jaden Daniels and Terry McLaurin. I would say, just if I was guessing here, I would say there's probably about a 60% chance that Jaden Daniels plays and maybe a 5% chance that we'll see Terry McLaurin. The good news that came out yesterday, and it's just a report, but there are reports that he will not need surgery on his injured quad. We were hearing things like sports hernia, which could have kept him out for 3 months, and it may still be that. He went to see a specialist the other day, but we should get an update on that sometime today from Dan Quinn. The other thing about this team, and you've heard Joe Whitt, the defensive coordinator, talk about this all last year and this year, is they got to get the ball back. They got to get it from the other team. Got to create turnovers. And I've talked about this many times over the years. It's one of the most amazing stats that you'll ever see in football. 1983, when the Redskins set the then record for most points scored in a season, 561 points. They were plus 43 on turnovers. You know, if you have a season where you get like plus 16, plus 17, that's a good year. They were plus 43. And they turned the ball over a few times themselves in that 83 season, but they were just creating turnover after turnover after turnover, and that gave them short fields, and they were turning those turnovers into points. And that's what you have to do defensively. Washington has only turned the ball over once, and I thought that was a really dumb turnover last week by Marcus Mariota, who had already had a big gain on the run, and rather than slide, decided he was going to leap over a tackler, got the ball punched out of his hands, and the Raiders were able to take over. But in 3 games, Joe Whitt's defense has not produced any turnovers. And for a guy who keeps talking about turnovers, that has to be very frustrating. Also, the fact that they had a game where they really could have, won something like 41-10. They wind up winning 41-24 because of some just big plays and some dumb mistakes that were made on those plays. Whitt was on fire yesterday. He had a really good news conference, went about 16, 17 minutes with the media. Here's some of the highlights. Number one, the explosive plays given up and the fact that they've yet to create turnovers.
They had 100 yards on 2 pass plays. And so you definitely don't want one, and those went for 10 points. You definitely don't want that to happen. We had opportunities at turnovers. We dropped the interception. 2 times we were sacking the quarterback. He had one hand on the ball, and we were close to getting the ball out, but close doesn't cut it. So we didn't have any turnovers. So, that was a recap of from the Vegas game, but I thought the guys, the play style was what we were looking for. We have what we call turnbacks where either we tackle them behind the line of scrimmage or their head is pointing towards their end zone, and we had 26 of those plays. That's a lot, when you're hitting and turning people back the other way or hitting them behind their line of scrimmage. So I really like the run and hit. We just have to cut down the explosive plays. We have 9 for the year. That's 3 per game, and that's too many.
Turnbacks. Never heard that before. Heard of greenbacks? backs, never heard of turnbacks. As for preventing those explosive plays, not as complicated as you might think.
We just didn't do our damn job. Cover the guy and send the ball where we're supposed to send it. So every coverage that we have, there's rules to it, and we want to send the ball. So in certain coverages, if they catch the ball on the out route, nothing's going to be said because we have other coverages for that. If they catch the ball here or there, we have, but if you're not defending where it's supposed to be defended, it's going to be an issue. And so we just got the players and they have to do their job there. So, and I got to make sure they do it.
That's what used to hear all the time from Bill Belichick. Do your job. Do your job. And he's got players not doing their job. He won't identify them, but he is in love with one. And this is the kind of player that my friend Doc Walker really loves. Doc talks about the manhood issue and guys that go one-on-one and win battles and things like that. And Javon Kinlaw has been a very good pickup for them. There was some criticism of that because he had been a first-round pick by the 49ers, hadn't lived up to expectations. They did talk to him last year. He wound up signing with the Jets. Jets chose not to re-sign him, so he comes here this year. And I don't want to say he's the most important player that they've had defensively, but week after week after week, you'll hear Whitt single him out as someone who is a difference maker. So given the opportunity again yesterday to sing the praises of Javon Kinlaw, who, by the way, spent some time growing up in D.C. Yeah, he was actually here part of the time he was a kid. And this was Whitt yesterday on what sounds to be his favorite player on defense, Javon Kinlaw.
I begged for the young man last year when he went to the Jets. And I sort of chuckled when people were saying negative things about him. He is what we needed at that position. He's a penetrated, disruptive man, okay? And so and now what has that done for Payne? All right, Payne doesn't have to – he's not going to get all the doubles. He's not going to get – because they got to take care of 99. And then once they take care of 99, now they got to take care of 94 at times. And so now 92. All right, he's had a sack every game, and everybody talks about Frankie not having a great year. Yes, Frankie is having a good year, okay? All right, people aren't going to allow Frankie to do what he's done. I'm gonna answer your question, but there are people not going to allow Frankie to do what he did last year, so they're turning bigs to him. So now DA. So now the people are not going to allow DA to keep doing what he's doing. They're not going to allow JK to keep doing what he's doing. So they have to make decisions on who are they going to allow to be factors in the game. And so JK has given us the ability to open up other pieces, same way that Frankie has given us the ability to open up other pieces. Frankie's time will come because they're not going to keep letting DA go wreck the game. They're not going to keep letting 99 wreck the game. So when those times come, the other players will have the opportunities to make plays.
So what you're getting out of Javon Kinlaw, and this might surprise you when you hear me say this, they are getting what the Mike Shanahan crew, Mike Shanahan coaching staff, had hoped to get out of Albert Haynesworth. That's the kind of player that they wanted Haynesworth to be. He was a defensive tackle. So they wanted him to tie people up, be a disruptor in the middle. And he had the physical talent to do that. And had he done the job that the Shanahans wanted him to do, he might have become a long-term player here. Instead, he was a cancer. He couldn't get him out of here because he decided that's not the way he wanted to play. He wanted to get sacks. Sacks get you attention. Tying up blockers, that doesn't do it. And what they're getting out of Javon Kinlaw is exactly that, a disruptor in the middle. And when you hear a coach say, a man, that's a real compliment. They're all men, and they're all tough men to get to the National Football League. I mean, let's not kid ourselves here. But it just reminds me of what they had hoped to get out of Haynesworth and couldn't get it. And he comes here, $100 million contract. Dan Snyder's salivating. He believes he's beaten the rest of the league because he's overpaid for a guy that very few teams wanted. Tennessee didn't really make much of an effort to bring him back. Tampa Bay was interested. But he brings him in here, and, it's like, hey, Al, Big Al, you do what you want to do here. And then the new coaching staff comes in and goes, no, that's not what we want you to do. And just to see what Javon Kinlaw is doing should remind you, if you remember those days, the days where he was actually a menace in town. He got arrested for harassing a waitress, let's put it that way. He decided to put the tip in her brassiere, things like that. He also was charged with some road rage, just a horrible, horrible human being. But had he been the football player that they wanted him to be and the player that he had the talent to be, we would have looked at him differently as a player than as the slob who couldn't pass the conditioning test and just was an absolute disgrace here. All right, more from Joe Whitt. This is on Bobby Wagner. Bobby Wagner with 2 sacks in the game on Sunday. Bobby Wagner, 34, 35 years old. And maybe not as fast as he used to be, but this is Whitt making a really good point about football speed and speed that you get at the combine.
I tell our scouts all the time, because I like veteran players, they move faster than rookies because rookies don't know what they're looking at. And so they might run a 40 faster, but they don't play faster because Bobby can key and diagnose what he sees and he goes, while the rookie's still sitting there trying to figure it out. So he plays extremely fast. I don't know what his 40 is, but he plays fast, and that's all that matters.
I've said this. I said this when Wagner got here. This is really older school than most people can remember. But when George Allen got here in 1971, he brought in a bunch of his veteran players from his days with the Rams. He brought in a couple of guys who'd been with them with the Bears, and they were the over-the-hill gang. They were the older players, and they didn't have a salary cap, so they were able to fit them all in. What Bobby Wagner reminds me of is Jack Pardee. Jack Pardee, at that point in his career, he had survived cancer. He was in his 30s. He'd had a long run with the Rams before that, but he knew where to be. He knew where to be at all times, and he was the quarterback of the defense, and he put players in the right position. And he just, was able to play football at a very high level despite the fact that he wasn't as fast as he used to be. And I think Bobby Wagner is the same thing. Pardee went on to become a coach, not a great coach, but coached a long time in the NFL and in college. And Wagner seems to be headed towards a career in business. He's got his MBA from Howard and is working towards that. But I would think that if he ever wants to coach, if he has any interest in that, he's got the capabilities, I think, to someday be a head coach. But I don't know if he's going that way. Last thing from Joe Whitt, and this is on, and a lot of coaches will say this, but he looks at the game tape and he sees his team with sacks, with at times a dominating defensive performance where they had 5 sacks, I think, of Geno Smith, and bottled up the run for the most part, and without the explosive plays. It's a totally different feel to the game, and this was sort of a sense of frustration that he had in looking at the game tape from Sunday.
Well, I told the guys that we left meat on the bone in this game. We should have had 3 more sacks. We dropped the interception. We didn't get the fumble out, and then to have the points at 16 and to give up that deep touchdown. If we want to be the type of defense that we can be, we can't give up and put that stank on us at the end of a game and make it feel bad. Because the game, if that play doesn't happen, it don't feel like, it feels just better, and so hopefully we can just not let that happen, and I don't anticipate it to happen.
That is a great term. That stank on us. They did get a late touchdown. Yeah, if you look at the stats for Geno Smith, they don't tell the story of the game. He had over 200 yards passing. This was a day where he was under siege all day long. And we'll see if they can do that to Michael Penix. Penix looked pretty good last year in taking the game to overtime, a game that would have put the Falcons in the playoffs and did propel the Commanders to the playoffs. So that's a concern for the defense coming up this week. I think the main concern is the offense and whether Marcus Mariota can perform as well as he did without Terry McLaurin, who I would say doesn't have really a great chance of playing on Sunday. Hasn't missed a game in now 6 seasons, but looks like he may miss one here. The only positive side of that is reports are he is not going to need surgery on that quad. You remember the sign stealing from the Spygate from the Patriots going back now, I think it's 18 years, I think. when they caught Bill Belichick for hanky panky with cameras and how they were able to send up really signals to Charlie Weiss for the offense as to what the defense was doing. This kind of caught people off guard. Robert Saleh, who got fired as coach of the Jets last year, is back in San Francisco as the defensive coordinator, and he's probably going to have a career like Steve Spagnuolo. He's probably going to have a long run as a defensive coordinator. He's just not a guy who's a particularly good head coach. Or you could chalk it up to, well, that was the Jets. Let's put him in another organization. He'll do well. But primarily, it seems like offensive guys get hired as head coaches. But as a defensive guy, he's very, very good. And they're getting ready to play Jacksonville this week. And he talked about sign stealing. And everyone, what? Sign stealing? What? Well, it's legal sign stealing. And he was actually kind of patting Sean McVay on the back because he has produced Jaguars coach Liam Cohn. Guys who have come off the McVay coaching tree, which is really remarkable to think about because I think Sean McVay was about 36 or 37 years old. Amazing. And he's already populating the league with assistant. But this is what Saleh said. Liam and his staff, a couple of guys coming from Minnesota, they got a really advanced signal stealing type system where they always find a way to put themselves in an advantageous situation. They do a great job of it. They have a formation you just try and get any nugget on they can, so they've got to be great. And our signals, we've got to beat with our communication to combat some of the tells that they might give on the field. Interesting, the spy versus spy thing. And it's not, it's not saying, hey, the league needs to investigate this. It's, they're really good at stealing signals, so we got to be prepared for that. Cohn's in his first year as a head coach. They're 2-1. He spent some time under Sean McVay with the Rams, working with the wide receivers and quarterbacks, and was their offensive coordinator in 2022, which I think is the year they won the Super Bowl, if I'm not mistaken. Coming up, Bob Carpenter is saying farewell on Sunday. He will do his last Nationals game, and at 72 is going to retire. I'll take a look at a very good story that was in the Post today about that and other thoughts that I have about the long term of Bob Carpenter, who said a great career and a great run here in Washington. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
We have Ravens preview coming up at 10:30. Ravens actually favored on the road at the defending champion Kansas City Chiefs, defending AFC champion Kansas City Chiefs, who have beaten the Ravens 6 of the last 7 times that they've played. But that's how little confidence the odds makers have in Kansas City. They just have not looked good. They beat the Giants last week, but the Giants are not good, and it was kind of a lackluster performance. Ravens scoring a lot of points. They have scored more points in 3 games than any team in history, and to still have a losing record. In other words, no one has been 1-2 or 0-3 with the number of points that they have scored. They are scoring points in bunches. It's just that the defense, which has been the hallmark of this organization forever, since they moved from Cleveland almost 30 years ago, that is what they have been identified as, a defensive team. They're not anymore. They give up too many damn points. They gave up 38 points. They got run over by Detroit. They had a 15-point lead, and they've done this in recent years in the early part of the season, but a 15-point lead against Buffalo in the last minutes, and they blew that. So we'll see. We'll see if they are markedly better than Kansas City. It's a 4:30 game, which means our coverage here will start at 4 o'clock on Sunday, as the Ravens have what is a really important September game. You can talk all you want about September being the exhibition season, but 1-3, you can rebound from that, and especially now with a 17-game schedule. But what you find is, and this is what Cincinnati went through last year, is that the longer this goes, every game becomes a playoff game, and you don't want that. You know, you want to have the opportunity to kind of be a front runner here, not trying to constantly catch up through the season and then have things out of your control at the end of the year where you need all this help. And even if you win, doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be in. You don't want that. So this is a big game for the Ravens coming up on Sunday. A big game for Washington as well. You gotta harvest your nuts. You gotta put the games away early that you're supposed to win. The line is down to 1.5 from 3.5, and we'll see today. We'll get some more information on Terry McLaurin and Jaden Daniels, but I would say it's almost no chance we're going to see McLaurin, and maybe a 60% chance that Jaden Daniels will play. This is just, thin air estimates for me. I got no inside knowledge on anything. All right, Bob Carpenter is going to call his last game for the Nationals on Sunday. He's doing this last series against the White Sox. And if you remember, when the Nationals came to town in 2005 from Montreal, there were things that were put in place, very late. They were working out of trailers in front of RFK Stadium to get the season started. And for whatever reason, they could not get a good cable deal to put the games on. They were on Masson. That was part of the deal to bring the team from Montreal, to keep Peter Angelos from suing, claiming it was his territory here in Washington, which it's not. But baseball just didn't want to be tied up in court with that. So they said, okay, here's how we'll do this. We'll give the Orioles control of Masson, the Mid-Atlantic Sports Network. Both teams will be televised on the network. We'll have 2 channels. And the revenue will be shared, but the Orioles will have control of that. Well, that just led to 20 years of battles in court with the Orioles claiming, no, this is not revenue for you. The Nationals saying, yes, it is revenue, back and forth. And when finally they got everything settled with new ownership with David Rubenstein owning the Orioles, and we got it all worked out. And it looks to me like this is going to be the last weekend for Masson. The Nationals have the ability to opt out at the end of the season, and I don't think it survives with just the Orioles. So this 21-year run of this network is probably going to end on Sunday when the Orioles play the last game of the season in New York against the Yankees and the Nationals finish up against the White Sox. But when Bob Carpenter was here, or came here, I should say, it was not the first year. Mel Proctor was the original announcer for the team, and he was working with Ron Darling. And here's how haphazard this was. Darling had never done a game before. And let me say this. The one season he spent here, he was terrible. Ron Darling was awful on TV. Fortunately for him, they didn't have much distribution. It was on RSN cable, which was in the district, and maybe a couple of other places. I did not have it in Montgomery County. I think at that time I had Comcast, and I could not get it. It was very rare to see a Nationals game on TV. They did 1 or 2 on ESPN. They had a couple that were on Channel 9, I believe, but they did not have a cable deal that was sufficient for this area. And what happened with Ron Darling is he left after a year, went to New York, and he's become terrific with the Mets. He had his learning curve here, but he didn't know how to do it. He had never worked an inning with Mel Proctor before. They met the first game. Proctor, who was great back in the day with John Lowenstein on HTS, and then went to San Diego to do the Padres for a couple of years, and that ended. He was not good when he came back. And on top of that, he butted heads with management. He was so frustrated at the lack of distribution of the games that at one point he gave out his cell number on the air just to see if anybody would call him. And baseball, remember this, they were not owned by the Lerners at that point. So the first year that they were here and half of the second year, they were owned by Major League Baseball. The deal to sell to the Lerners didn't happen until June of 2006. So baseball didn't like Mel Proctor tweaking their nose over this. So Proctor was out, and Bob Carpenter comes in. Now, Carpenter had an extensive background as an announcer. He'd done Cardinal games. He did, people don't remember this, he did Game Day on ESPN, college football. And he's now 72 years old. He's done the last 20 years, and he's had a variety of partners. He had Rob Dibble for a while. He had He had, what was the pitcher? Don Sutton was with him for a while. He had F.P. Santangelo for a long time. Now he's done it with Fransden, and I think they're pretty good. But Bob's out after the weekend. He's going to call it a career. And he said in an interview with the Post the other day, if it wasn't for the pitch clock, I might have retired 2 years ago. I think he's probably kidding about that. But, yeah, it's probably saved a lot of people for baseball working in it and watching it, as I don't really like to invest in a game that goes that long. They're going to have a pregame ceremony scheduled for tomorrow, but that could be washed out. It's a 4 o'clock game. They're talking about rain all tomorrow afternoon. Carpenter grew up in St. Louis. His sister had worked for the team, and that helped him get a job as an usher. Then he started in his broadcasting career with the Tulsa Oilers. 1976. He's lived in Tulsa ever since. Really crazy. The team located to New Orleans after the 76 season, but Carpenter stayed in Tulsa. A few months later, mutual friends introduced him to his wife, Debbie, who grew up in Las Vegas, attended Oklahoma State. They've been married for 46 years. In 1984, he was hired to call about 50 Cardinals games for a short-lived regional sports network called Sports Time. His debut came on opening day at Dodger Stadium with Fernando Valenzuela on the mound and Jack Buck alongside him. He must have been nervous as hell for something like that. Wow. Talk about a legend, but he worked with Jack Buck. The network folded after 1 year, but Carpenter called a number of games for the USA Network, was the play-by-play voice for the Rangers for 3 years. In 1988, he began a 17-year run as the regular voice for ESPN, which included a brief stint as studio host on College Game Day. I remember him doing a lot of baseball games for ESPN. And then he learned that ESPN was not going to renew his contract after the 2005 season. Got a call from his agent early in 2006 about a position with Masson calling games. Mel Proctor was going to be out, and Ron Darling left to become a color analyst with the New York Mets. And Carpenter had done some soccer games at RFK Stadium during the World Cup, so he took the job during spring training. And I thought he was very good, and people were familiar with him because of his ESPN work. I do remember this. This is when I guess the learners were swinging big. They were new at this, and I guess they didn't realize the kind of money it was going to take. But they tried to get Dan Schulman. Dan Schulman working for ESPN. Now he's from Toronto, so he's back working for the Blue Jays. But they tried to get him, and Nationals fans actually said, don't lose Bob Carpenter. They brought him back for a third year, and that's turned into 20. Yeah, I'd forgotten about that they had flirted with Schulman. I don't know how much Schulman flirted with them. I don't know how interested he was in doing that, because he was doing games for ESPN, and he was the voice of Sunday Night Baseball, I guess on radio at the time, or maybe TV at that point, but he elected to stay with ESPN. This surprises me. I would have thought that his number one moment as an announcer for the Nationals would be the Steven Strasburg debut, which was hyped to the moon and outran the hype. He struck out 14 batters the last 7 he faced. No, he did that game. He also did Max Scherzer's 20 strikeout game. He did the debuts of Bryce Harper, which, as I recall, was in Los Angeles against the Dodgers, Juan Soto. He said Jordan Zimmerman's no-hitter on the final day of 2014 is his biggest moment. It was cool to get the no-hitter. They didn't need the game. And it was really a great Steven Souza making a great catch in the outfield to preserve it. But I would not have thought that would be number one. He says he'll be back to do some book signings, maybe some season ticket holder events and things like that. But the team is going to send him off planned festivities for tomorrow. I imagine they could be postponed until Sunday. And I even wonder if the game is rained out tomorrow, would they even make it up with a doubleheader on Sunday, since, the White Sox stink too. They're not going anywhere. There have been seasons where teams play 160 games, 161, so it's possible for that. But they're going to give away the See You Later T-shirts, and they will put his name on the facade underneath the broadcast booth. I think that's well-deserved. I've gotten the chance to meet him a couple of times, have him on the radio. I think he's a terrific guy and has been a terrific announcer here, and from what I was told, working with F.P. Santangelo was not the easiest thing to do. And I think he did that for close to a decade. So hats off to Bob Carpenter. great run. He's retiring probably on his terms. We don't know, and the future's uncertain. Where are they going to be? Will they be back on Masson next year? Will there be a Masson? Will they be absorbed as part of what Rob Manfred is putting together as sort of a network similar to the NFL where all the teams are under the same umbrella? We'll see. But Bob Carpenter gave us a lot of years of enjoyment here, and looking forward to him being saluted, hopefully tomorrow, if the weather holds up. Coming up in the next hour, we'll do Ravens preview and also what Ed Orgeron says about the new NIL. Funny stuff. Stay with us. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630. There are people that I know that have seen many, many, many more baseball games in person than I have, and they have never seen a no-hitter in person. I was fortunate enough to not only see a no-hitter in person, I saw an historic no-hitter in person. And it's one of the coolest things that I've ever seen in person. You know, it's a baseball game. It's a regular season baseball game. Nobody gets a hit for one of the teams. It's more common today than it was then, but 44 years ago today, I was at the Astrodome in Houston to see Nolan Ryan pitch his 5th no-hitter, and I'll get to that later this hour. We also got Ravens preview as they're actually favorites on the road in Kansas City on Sunday. We'll have that game for you here on ESPN 630, starting with pregame at 4 o'clock. Some college football to get to. Oh, before we do that, let me just say about last night's game. Truth be told, I was not there for the second half. These night games that don't involve the Commanders, tough for me. I would like to stay up, watch the whole thing, but a bedtime close to midnight just doesn't work that well for me. But I did see those horrible uniforms that the Cardinals were wearing. It was, supposed to be, I guess, an all-white night for them. A lot of these night games, teams will wear, like, monochrome uniforms, all dark, all white. They were wearing something that looked like, and I used to do a lot of painting for my father in the apartment business when I was in high school and summers in college. They look like drop cloths. Yeah, look like something that you would put down on the floor when you're painting a house or an apartment, a room, whatever, and just spattered with paint. I don't know exactly what the fashion statement was there, but at some point, doesn't the league have to go, I know we sell product off of this, but if it looks like that, when I first saw it, it was part of the prime coverage. One of the sideline reporters was talking to one of the players, and I thought, look at his jersey. He's already got it all messed up with no, that's how it looks. So at least there was red and white in there. At least they had the team colors. Sometimes these college games you turn on, you don't know what teams you're watching because they're wearing some alternate uniform. And it's not just like the black. It's like a color that's totally different than what the school colors are. That doesn't make a lot of sense. Anyway, speaking of college football, Brian Kelly, although they are 3-0 at LSU, is on the hot seat. You got a lot of fans drumming their fingers on the table because when Brian Kelly came in 4 years ago, he was supposed to do what Ed Orgeron had done a couple of years before, have an undefeated season, win the national championship. That's what you do at LSU. And he hasn't come close to that. He's had 4 lost seasons. He's had 3 lost seasons. He had Jaden Daniels for 2 years, didn't get his team into the national title conversation. It's very early in the season. They got a big game coming up this week against Ole Miss. And, Kelly apparently is not feeling the heat. Maybe it's related to the contract, the 10-year, $100 million deal. But, when he came in, and I heard Paul Feinbaum and others say this, well, look, if Ed Orgeron can win a championship at LSU, anybody can. And Brian Kelly, who is handicapped by academics and money and all those sorts of things at Notre Dame, won't be facing that at LSU. He's a hell of a coach. Look what he did at Cincinnati before that. He ought to be stacking up the national titles. Well, I haven't done that yet. So is he on the hot seat? Even though he's 3-0, he exploded at the media a week or so ago after they only put 20 points up against Florida. A team that's not very good, team that got blown out at home by University of South Florida the week before. It would seem like he's responding to the heat. He apologized for that, but it seems like the heat is there. Booger McFarland on the Dan Patrick Show the other day says, no, that's not the case. He's an LSU alum.
I think he's very secure because
Okay.
I know what the buyout is like, and the buyout is substantially large. And unless you're Texas A&M, who wants to spend $75 million buying out a coach, then I think BK realizes, and I think everybody in college football realizes that there's a difference between the heat being turned up because the natives are restless, and then there's also a difference the heat's being turned up and you may get fired. I think BK feels the heat because every coach who preceded him has won a national championship. Saban, Les Miles, Ed Orgeron. They all won national championships in the first 3 or 4 years, and this is year 4 for BK. So he feels the heat, and regardless whether LSU wins this game or loses this game, the heat is still going to be there until the ring has been secured. And so he understands that. He knows it. He's heard it from me. He's heard it from a lot of people, what the expectations are. I think this is the best defense that he's had. The offense is not, for whatever reason, clicking on all cylinders. So it should be a good test in Oxford on Saturday.
Mike Gundy and Dabo Swinney didn't forget how to coach. What happened?
I think Mike Gundy got caught in a situation where he didn't evolve with the times. And when you don't evolve, you get left behind. I think Dabo is in a situation that's a little bit different because Dabo did start to evolve. He went into the transfer portal. His best defensive player came from Purdue out of the transfer portal. It's kind of a weird thing up there, DP. They got a ton of talent. Like, talent is not the issue. And so here's what I always go back to. When you have a coach that's been successful and you have a team that has a ton of talent, but that team is not winning, I always go back to this. There's a disconnection between this team and the coach. And you wonder how that could happen. But at a certain point, the message starts falling on deaf ears. Like, the coach can be the same and the team can have been in the program, but the team is not hearing the message for whatever reason. I think that's the case up in Clemson, man. They got probably 5 or 6 guys that are going to be drafted in the first 2 rounds. So how can a team that talented be 1-3? Somehow there's a disconnect between the coaches and the players. And on top of that, I'll go one step further. I don't think Dabo has hired the greatest coaches to run his offense and defense since he's in the last few years. Like, he's got Garrett Riley running the offense. He's got Tom Allen running the defense. There's a disconnect there also because when talent and the coaching staff don't connect, I think what you get is you get 1-3.
That's Booger McFarland on the Dan Patrick Show a couple of days ago. Yeah. So he says Brian Kelly is safe. Now, if he loses this game at Ole Miss, the Heat's certainly going to be turned up on him. No question about it. And one who knows about that is Ed Orgeron, who had arguably the greatest team in college football history in 2019. And just a couple of years later, he's out the door. That's kind of the way it works at LSU. Joe Burrow leaves, and you can't replicate what they did. Now, as far as what they did in 2019, this was Orgeron on our morning show on Sportsmanlike yesterday. And I would agree exactly what he says here about the team that he coached in 2019.
I think with that team, that with Joe and the offense that we had, I think we could have beat anybody any day. Now, Miami had a great team in 2001. It had been a great challenge. Alabama had some great teams. USC has some great teams that I was part of. But, the only way to answer that is on the field. But I just think that we have one of the best teams in college football history.
Coach O, LSU, and Ole Miss are getting it on down in Oxford this weekend. 2 of your former teams. Where do your loyalties lie? Who do you like in this matchup?
Well, LSU is still paying me.
I love it. Love it.
Amazing, Coach.
That's the question right there, right?
There it is. Say no more.
But look, I will say this to you. Lane Kiffin is doing a tremendous job. And for someone to appreciate the job that he's doing is me. Because I was there. And, Ole Miss is a good school, but it's not a top-tier SEC school. But he's not letting that get in his way. The recruiting that he's doing and the coaching that he's doing is phenomenal. Now, the job that Blake Baker's doing on defense and getting Corey Raymond back and getting Kyle Williams back at LSU and getting that tradition back on defense has been phenomenal. I think that they have a little work to do on the offensive line. The offense is not as productive as they want to right now. But one of the things I believe in, that teams, it's too early to say who's the best team in the country. You got to keep on getting better every week, man. And look at the matchups they have this week. Guys are going to have to respond. 100 people play, 50 people lose. But that doesn't mean you're out of it, man. You got to keep on getting better and keep on competing.
Coach O, you just brought up your loyalties. LSU is still paying you. It is not off the board that in the college football playoff that LSU could face Miami. There's a certain offensive analyst on that staff, and I'm curious whether or not you'd root for your money or your son. LSU, Miami, who are you rooting for because your son is on the Miami staff?
Yeah, all bets are off. Go Canes. All bets are off. And plus, I have both of my twin boys are here. Cody is working on offense. Now Parker is working on defense here. So I got two boys here. So there's no doubt I'll be pulling for the Hurricanes. But still, LSU is always in my heart.
Well, Coach O, let's go back to that LSU team in 2019. You obviously mentioned Joe Burrow. We hate that he's dealing with that injury because we love to watch him play football. But take us behind the scenes. We obviously see him in those big moments make those plays. We see the numbers that he puts up. You had a front row seat to it. Tell us why he's so great at what he does.
Because he's like that every day. He's a general. He's got his grit, his toughness. His leadership is every day. I mean, I didn't even have to shoot a team out. Like we'd win the game, and he'd come in there and say, "Hey, we weren't good enough in the red zone. We got to get off our butts." I'll say, "All right, good, Joe. Where'd he go?" But the leadership that he has is incredible. And then to be able to figure stuff out during the game. One time he didn't throw the hot to the number 2 receiver, and I rarely chew Joe's butt out. He comes to the sidelines and say, "Hey, Joe, you should have threw the ball to the number 2 receiver." He said, "Yeah, Coach, I know that, but he was a freshman. He wasn't going to catch it, so I threw it to Jamar." I said, "Hey, that's the last time I'm telling him anything. Go, Joe, go." But he just to be able to figure stuff out in a split second during the game, so smart, so reactive, so tough. That's what makes him so great.
Ed Orgeron, the former LSU coach on Sportsmanlike yesterday, that part about still being paid by LSU, when he was asked who you're rooting for, and he said, "I'm rooting for LSU because they're still paying me." When he was fired at the end of the 2021 season, they came to him and they, explained to him, how it's going to work. And the buyout in his contract, I forget what the number was, 17 sticks in my mind, maybe more than that, but it was definitely double-digit millions. And he said, asked about, "Hey, what's it like? You're forced out the door 2 years after you won the national championship. What about that?" He said, "When they told me what the buyout number was, I said, 'How fast would you like me to leave?'" That was great. He'll work somewhere. Somebody will hire him as a defensive coordinator. What he's saying is he wouldn't get the money from LSU if he worked someplace else. So he's watching his twin sons coach in college and waiting for his opportunity to get back. I'd imagine if he wants to coach like a mid-major school, he can do that. But I would think that he'll be back at a big-time school as a defensive coordinator. And it's for a guy at that stage of the game who's already been a head coach, who's already won a national title at a top-level school like LSU, it may be a better deal for him to be a defensive coordinator because you don't have to do all the NIL stuff. That's up to the school, the head coach, other assistant coaches. But he had on the NIL – on our morning show on Sportsmanlike yesterday, Ed Orgeron had a great line about the NIL.
Now you can walk through the front door with the cash. Back then we had to walk through the back door. Just a joke, man. Just a joke.
No, I got you, Coach. I'm with you.
Okay. Yeah,
just a joke, Coach.
I'm with you, Coach. It's just a joke, Coach.
Just a joke, Coach. Just to make it abundantly clear. But with all that being said, Coach, is this a new era that you would want to embrace, walking through the front door with the money? Would you ever want to get back into coaching at the collegiate level?
I'm going to get back. I plan on getting back this year. And I'm going to get back, and I had enough. My boys are set. I've taken 4 years on the beach. You can only go to the beach so many times. I've had a great time here on South Beach. Well, I got 2 boys at the University of Miami. Mario Cristobal has been great to me. I got another boy at Tulane. He's coaching the tight ends. Everybody's set, and I'm getting bored, and I've texted them too many times during the day what's going on. I'm at practice in Miami right now. I'm in a stairwell hiding so they don't see me on the phone.
We know you're enjoying it because Coach O somehow has become a TMZ guy where it's like he's just walking the beach by himself, and then you see Coach O without his shirt on. I'm like, wait, do we really need to see this? Does the world need to see that? But you look good. I do give you credit. You are looking good, so good for you. Yeah.
Hey, I love working out. You guys know that. I have no hobbies. My hobby is working out. That's what I like to do. And I don't play golf. I don't do anything else. Hobbies, my wife and football, and my family. So that's it.
Coach O, let's go back to LSU for a second. You won a championship, and you're not the coach there anymore. Brian Kelly has not won a championship. Do you envision him being the coach for a long time there?
Well, let me say this to you. I know what he's going through, okay? And LSU is a great place to be, but the expectations are win a championship or go home. And that's how you felt the whole time. So I know how he's feeling. I think that he's done a tremendous job of getting the roster the way he wanted. I think he's doing an outstanding job. But LSU wants you to win a national championship. Now, is he going to get in the playoffs this year? Is he going to be in the hunt? How much time they're going to give him to win a championship? I don't know that. But I know for me, the third year, I felt a bunch of pressure to win the championship, and we did.
Yeah, that's it. That's year 4 is it. And Brian Kelly is in year 4. Do they have a team that's capable of winning the national championship? I don't know. It's way too early in the season to tell. But they have not looked like world beaters this year. The close game with Florida. They had another game that was not all that impressive earlier in the year, so we'll see. But Ed Orgeron knows, and Ed Orgeron walked away with a pile of cash. Now he's bored. Now he wants to coach again. I would think that he'll get back in as a defensive coordinator. A lot of hubbub in the Dallas area about Micah Parsons coming back to town with the Packers on Sunday night, and Jerry Jones said there's not going to be a video tribute to him, as there shouldn't be. Why would anybody be worked up about that? Micah Parsons was in Dallas for 4 years. They didn't win bupkis when he was there. If he was there for 4 years and he was the MVP of a Super Bowl championship, yeah. But no, there's the video tributes. Those are new things. And, that's good for a player who spends 10 years in one place and, goes someplace else for the twilight of his career and then comes back and gets some recognition from the fans. That's fine. But that's not Micah Parsons. And he is a key player for them. And this is a key game because Green Bay wins this, they go to 3-1, and if Dallas loses, they could be 1-3, and 1-3, puts them in that spot where they're playing uphill the rest of the year. So this is a huge game, and there's no big thing about a Micah Parsons tribute. It'd be interesting to see how the fans greet him when he goes on the field to start the game on Sunday night, but I don't think there's any real need for this. Have you been following this Kawhi Leonard story? Pablo Torre's done some great reporting on this. This has been going on for a couple of months now. Pablo Torre finds out, and the gist of it is Steve Ballmer, the owner of the Clippers, got his guy in 2019. He needed a big star for the Clippers to get some of the attention away from the Lakers. The Clippers are clearly the secondary team in the way that the Nets are the secondary team in New York to the Knicks, even when the Knicks aren't good and the Nets are good. Nets made the finals a couple of times. Nobody cared. They didn't win, but nobody cared. They talked about the Knicks. So the Clippers have sort of been in that boat, and Ballmer needed to get a star. And so he got Kawhi Leonard in 2019. Now, Kawhi Leonard, if you've been following this, according to what Pablo Torre is reporting, got a no-show job endorsing a tree planting company in which Ballmer had invested a lot of money. And as the company was teetering and Kawhi was still due his payments, Ballmer dumped more money into it. And it's now seen as a way to circumvent the salary cap. The league says it's looking into it. They're not getting too worked up about this, want to keep things calm. But it's pretty clear from his reporting that there was some hanky-panky that went on there. Now we get this from The Athletic. The Athletic is reporting that in 2019, Kawhi Leonard was flirting with the Lakers. They wound up with LeBron instead and won an NBA championship, so it worked out well for the Lakers. But according to what The Athletic is reporting, while he was negotiating with the Lakers, Kawhi, he had asked for an ownership stake in the Lakers. Well, Magic Johnson was in this situation where he was a part owner, came back to play, had to sell his stake to do that. The NBA doesn't allow that. So if you are an owner and want to play, you have to sell to play. He wanted to come in as a player and get part ownership. That wasn't going to happen. This is The Athletic reporting. And the other thing he wanted was unlimited access to a private plane and guaranteed off-court endorsement deals. Well, he got those off-court endorsement deals from the Clippers and didn't have to do anything. There's no sign this company, this tree planting company, that he ever did any work for them. Never cut a commercial, anything like that. So those things he asked for. And it reminded me of this. There's a guy who used to work in Manhattan. He used to run around Manhattan with a video camera. And his name was Ugly George. And the Ugly George shtick, this goes back maybe 40 years ago, the Ugly George shtick was to approach women and ask them to sleep with him. Now, 99.99% of women would say no, but there might be one or two who would say yes. And so this is kind of like if you don't ask, you don't get. So here he is asking the Lakers for part ownership, according to this report, and unlimited access to a private plane and guaranteed off-court endorsement deals. As it turned out, they wound up with LeBron. Worked out well for them. Kawhi went to the Clippers. They haven't won anything. He's hurt all the time, and now they are under the microscope, according to this reporting from Steve Ballmer. And speaking of the NBA, WWE star Logan Paul has filed an injunction against Heritage Auctions in Texas, alleging authenticity concerns over a Michael Jordan signed piece of the United Center floor that Paul won at an auction. Paul says he was not allowed to look at this floor and the authenticity of it before the payment, which was originally due September 25th, was asked for. According to court records, Paul was told by Heritage he would lose his right to the floor if he did not meet the deadline. The winning bid was over $500,000, including the buyer's premium. Wow. Heritage marketed the floor as the ultimate Michael Jordan display piece. The listing said it was an 8x8 section of the 1994 to 98 United Center original game used court. Of course, they won their last championship with Jordan in 1998. It is signed by Jordan, includes the inscriptions Air Jordan, 5-time MVP, 6-time Finals MVP, 10-time scoring title, and Hall of Fame 2009. So he's saying this doesn't look kosher here. Heritage says, well, that's part of the bidding that you did. You didn't have the opportunity to inspect it, and now you're saying it's a fugazi. Paul's injunction alleges the court's condition doesn't match the court from the 95 to 98 period, and as a result of the court being either replaced or, as Heritage claims, repainted and resurfaced. According to the injunction, PSA certification says the Bulls logo appears different than in photos from 2001 to 2005. So you got that kind of cash to buy that kind of memorabilia, and if it sells for that amount of money, shouldn't you be allowed to fully inspect that? I mean, that's the cost of a decent house in most cities. I mean, $500,000, you have an inspector go through it. I mean, seems like you would do that, but apparently that wasn't done. The sale goes through, and they go, hey, wait a minute, this doesn't look fully like the one we thought we were going to see. What is going on here? So we'll see where this goes. But yeah, I would think that Logan Paul, he's a big star, WWE, he would have the cash to do that, and it seems like people who invest that kind of money in memorabilia probably should know what they're doing, not to the point of, hey, I won, but doesn't look quite what it should be. So we will see. Now, by the way, college football tonight, Virginia is playing Florida State. So one of the biggest games that really cemented Virginia was when they upset Florida State, and it was the first loss they ever had in the ACC. We're going back probably 30 years ago. But, how the landscape of college football has changed so much. Florida State and Virginia still in the ACC all these years later. Crazy. All right, coming up, we'll do Ravens preview. Ravens playing at Kansas City on Sunday. That's the late window game. Means our coverage here on Sunday will start at 4 o'clock. We'll get to that and more as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN.